Welcome to the Doug and Mike Show. I'm Doug.
Hey, and I'm Mike.
And we have real conversations with real people. Mike, who is our special guest today?
Well, we've reached into the hat, pulled out another awesome guest today. We did we had a state president of the Firefighters on the end of last year over in the Louisiana president. Today we've got our hometown, home state, Florida Professional Firefighters President Bernoska. Thanks for taking time out to join us today.
Well, thank you, fellas. Thank you. Hope I could keep the ratings going. Following Chad, that's going to be hard, man. I know Louisiana president pretty well. He's a funny guy. That's a pretty high bar I'm going to have to live up to right there. So if you're expecting that, I'm going to disappoint some because I don't have the funny accent or the LSU Tigers as national championships to fall behind on right now.
Yeah, the accent was pretty cool, man. We enjoyed being with him. He had some great things to say about you, and it was interesting to have him on. So
I don't know if he did, Mike. I don't think he did.
We'll go back.
You may not have. I lost that bet when the Gators.
We'll probably have to edit that part out.
All right, so let's dive in here. Let's go back. It's your first day on the truck. You got a thicker head of hair than you had now. You might be a little taller than you are right now. You got your fire gear next to the apparatus. The bell goes off. Tell us about that first run you had as a firefighter.
So I started in 1994 in Seminole County, local 3254. Always got to drop that nice IFF number. They were a newly organized local back then, a couple years into it, but first call, man. It's nervous, obviously. Station right outside of Sanford, and went out for a chest pain. Was my first call I ever ran on. I didn't realize that they had garage door openers on the truck. So not being the rookie, I was waiting by the garage door to close it because I'd seen this in other departments where the fireman has to stand there by the door and close the door. And so literally almost missed the call. They took off. They went to hit the door closer. Back then they were able to use those, and I had to run down the apron to get on the truck to make it to my first call. So other than being scared to death and almost missing that call, I couldn't tell you anything about my first patient or anything else. But that was it, man. And
the chest pain might have been you having chest pain.
Well, definitely, I was an SVT. I could promise you that.
That's awesome.
That is a great story, man.
Yeah, 1994.
Wow, what a sleeper story. I love that.
Coming up on 30 years soon.
I got stuck with a dirty needle on my very first call, so that was my initiation.
Well, Doug, I've known you a long time. And that may provide for some good questions to my answers, or answers to my questions, if you will. Sorry.
The background is becoming much clearer.
It could. Oops, I should not have disclosed that so early. All right, so forget about your first call on the job. Let's just go a little bit further back. You're in high school. What kind of car are you driving in high school?
Ooh, high school. I had a 86 Ford Ranger. It was a four-cylinder that I worked all summer to save money. And my mom's a single mom. My dad died in Vietnam. Just a little background. 2 months before I was born. So it's really just been my mom and I. So when in 86, I went to work up north on my grandparents' farm. I worked for the summer, saved up about, $1,500. It helped with the down payment. And then when I graduated, my mom gave me that 86 Ranger. I wanted it to be four-wheel drive. It was not. I wanted it to be a little bit lifted. Being here in Central Florida, more of a country town, Claremont. I wanted it to be lifted up a little bit, maybe go out to the mud holes. But it wasn't that. It was good on gas, I could tell you that, and a little manual. It's probably one of the last manuals I've had. So it's 86 Ford Ranger.
Man, that's cool. I'm looking at pictures.
The question I wanted to ask you, what was your top two songs playing on that radio inside?
Man, I think I was still in the Guns N' Roses phases, to be honest with you. I had Guns N' Roses, on one end. And on the other end, I think I had some Vanilla Ice kicking.
There we go.
Ice, baby. You know that one, Doug.
Oh man, come on.
Yeah.
Who didn't know that one?
For sure,
baby.
For sure, some Beastie Boys. I mean, Beastie Boys were big in the late '80s. So I mean, I had that Paul Revere on my
License to Ill, right?
License to Ill. So yeah.
Hold on. I just found my Fuller brush in my drawer. I'm going to start combing my hair.
Hey, so listen,
wow,
they've got
hold on, I got to put on some Pierre Cardin.
They've got a documentary supposed to be coming out on the Beastie Boys. Man, it's supposed to be like the whole life story and everything. I'm definitely going to be checking that out, man. I had two older brothers, and we had Beastie Boys albums and tapes everywhere, strewn across the bedroom.
For sure, man. Good times. I mean, that's some good memories. Thanks for asking. I didn't know we were going there.
86 Ford. I pulled pictures of this thing up, and this is a great looking truck. This is a great look. And, it's funny. Like, that thing's sought after now, Like, you look on here in the prices, and, like, people are, like, dying to have those. It's just what were we thinking when we got rid of these vehicles we had?
Oh, man.
No. It's just say, I remember you talking briefly about your dad burning. It's like which other, did you have any other male role models in your life growing up?
So I did. So my mom being a single mom, we were raised, I was raised right outside of Chicago in Northwest Indiana. My grandparents did have a farm up in Indiana, and my grandfather was a pipe fitter, and he was actually president of the Pipe Fitters Union. So, with the way you're raised and your background and how you develop as a young person in your brain, we didn't have a choice growing up of whether or not there were certain things we could buy, especially if you remember back in the 70s was a real big push for Buy American, USA, Made in USA products. That's why my grandfather would only let us have Fords or Chevys. He was a 100% union man out of Chicago, Pipe Fitters Union. And that was the household I was raised in when my mom, who actually worked in this, my grandfather was a foreman there and then a union boss for a while. And she worked in the steel mills as well. He got her a job in the steel mill. So I grew up in right outside of Gary in a steel town, if you will, Gary, Indiana. And my grandparents and my grandfather in particular had a big influence on me because he was the only male figure around when I was growing up. Other than my uncle, who was a Vietnam veteran as well, a Navy vet. And I grew up with my cousins, and life was normal, man. And, I never really knew my dad. So to speak about that never really was hard for me until later in life when I got to meet guys that served with my father in Vietnam. They reached out to me, contacted me once the internet became prevalent where you could look up people's names. They tracked me down when I worked in Seminole County, and they would call me every Memorial Day just to say, hey, man, just thinking of you. We knew your dad, and I kind of early on, I was in my 20s, I kind of was like, oh, well, that's nice. I didn't really. But as I've gotten older, and it was about, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to go up to Chattanooga, Tennessee for a military reunion. The men that my father served with in Vietnam have reunions every year. That year it was in Gatlinburg. And I got to go up and meet guys who knew my father better than I did. Other than the stories my mom told me, I got to meet the guys he served with. It was a very emotional reunion for them. I praised them, hugged their necks, and told them, hey, man, you guys knew my father better than me. But after leaving, I kind of reflected on that. And, I got to sit back and think about all the things my mom, my grandparents have told me about my father, and then hear about the guys that served with them, and the sense of pride of knowing that somehow through his genes, there was some good things that were instilled in me by everyone that had a chance to really affect my life. So it was really heartwarming and touching. And, every time I don't take for granted anymore the sacrifices that our veterans have made for us to live in this, the beautiful United States that we live in my dad's name, which is my name. is on the Vietnam Memorial. So every time I go to DC, which we were just up there in March for the IFF Ledge Conference, I never miss an opportunity to go look and reflect and know that my dad fought for this country and the freedoms that we enjoy. So I know that sounded like that was pretty heavy, I'm sure, but it's something that I feel, passionate about. And,
part of your story, really, right? It's incredible too, is how, it evolves and how your emotions and all those things develop through time. Like you were talking about as a child growing up, it's like it wasn't ever there. So it's probably something, other people would expect you to feel a certain way, but your experience was just that, he wasn't there, and
that's right.
And then as you mature and grow older, and then it starts to mean something different to you. And then the people, these people in his life reach out, you make that connection. And then now you're truly connected, in a new way through him. So that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing with us. I'd be curious to see how many names apart on the DC wall. Cause my uncle, died in Vietnam as well. So he's on that wall and with Bellamy and Bernoska not being too far away. I wonder how many names are in between. So turning the page, what brought you to Florida? What was that? Obviously you had the Union seeds kind of planted early. So what did that look like for you kind of in that move?
Sure. So 84, I believe I think I was 13 or 14. My mom took a job at Disney. The weather coming out of Northwest Indiana in the winters were kind of brutal up there, and the weather attracted us down here. My cousins and my mother's sister, my Aunt Sue and Uncle Ed, had moved down here, and we had come and visited. And my mom sat down with me and said, "Hey, it's almost like the Ralph Macchio thing, right? When he went out for Karate Kid. Now I'm not a Karate Kid." So I came down to Florida. I came down to Florida. My mom obviously wanted to make a better life for us down here in the sunshine, and so we came down. I believe, I want to say it's ninth grade. I start end of eighth grade. So going into high school is when we came down here, and we moved originally right into Orlando, and then within 6 months moved out to Claremont. So that's where I've been since 84 out here in Claremont. So yeah, she came down here for work with Disney, which is, who Disney attracted a lot of people and still does, even in the student programs as they hire kids out of college. So I will say that, having being the kid of a family member who works for Disney, I was one of the most spoiled kids. I could go to Disney anytime I wanted. And I actually, at the time, got tired of going because I could just go. It wasn't like I had to fight and save up all year to go to Disney. I mean, I could go anytime I wanted, which meant I was spoiled and I never went.
Yeah. Hey, look, my dad was Disney for 10 years and we'd come down there the same thing, man. I was so tired of that place. It was unbelievable.
That's right. Yeah, but that's how we ended up down in Florida, and went and graduated high school out here. Actually, graduated high school '88, Groveland, Florida. It's not even, the high school is not even there anymore. It used to be one of the oldest high schools in the state. Actually, it was one of the smallest 2A high schools. We only used to have 5As back in the late '80s, and what
was the mascot?
Actually, it was the Gators. The Groveland Gators.
That was a Gator.
There you go. Now we're finding out a lot on this podcast.
There you go. So the Boosters' first game I ever went to, college football game, up north, everything was geared towards pro. Up north, I grew up a Cubs fan because my grandparents, a Bears fan, a Bulls fan, and a Blackhawks fan. So it was just pro sports mainly up north.
And those were good years to be fans of those teams too.
Other than good Indiana basketball, there wasn't a lot of college sports that I paid attention to until I came to Florida with this funny accent, and people started asking me who I was a fan of. Of course, you only had really two choices, and I apologize to you, Doug, because that third choice was never even brought up. I didn't even know that Miami had anything to do with the college. I thought it was the Dolphins. But
no, that's true, because they were just winning national championships, so it's not a big deal.
But they asked me if I was a Gator fan or a Seminole fan, and I'm going to tell you how I became a Gator fan. I had watched a bowl game, and I believe it was in the Gator Bowl, and it was Clemson. But I thought that Clemson had a gator paw. I thought that was a gator paw on their helmet. So I thought it being the Gator Bowl, I'm like, well, of course I'm a Gator fan. And that's how I became a Gator fan.
And that's awesome.
My first college football game I ever went to, one of our football boosters out here in Groveland took us up. 86, I went to see Emmitt Smith play in the Swamp.
Wow.
Galen Hall was the coach, and I forget who the quarterback was there. I think the quarterback right now is a head coach in Jacksonville at the college up there in Jacksonville. I forget the name of the college. But anyways, that was my first game, and I was in love with it, in college football then. And I think I cherish college football more than any other sport there is, other than Cubs baseball. When they won in 16, I told my kids, it's no longer on us. It's on the next generation of Cubs fans to worry about another 100-year loss. So I got to witness that. I wish my grandparents were around to see the Cubs win back in 16, but I know that one was for them, and I knew they were lifetime Cubs fans. We'd go to games every summer up to Wrigleyville.
Yeah, Wrigley Field is just so iconic for sure.
Right.
And the fire station across the street, it's the best.
Right. That's right. So yeah. Good.
So do you have any personal passion projects that you're working on right now that are really big on your horizon right now?
Not really. I could tell you that one of the challenges, and I'm sure this is with Chad and what we're all dealing with, you as an emeriti, you're still in the realm, what's going on, and Mike being on the job and serving on this board. Right now, I'm just I'm flooded, man. I'm just fighting to stay above water first of all, today I'm also a teacher and a principal because of the homeschooling. So that's my project for today, being on this show.
The dean, the principal, the teacher, everything. The lunch man, the lunch lady.
So yeah, my wife had to run into the school real quick. She is the coordinator of a preschool in town, and so keeping my head above water. And then, of course, I'm still active on the job here in Orlando. Man, I wish I could be more interesting to say I'm like a Renaissance guy working on something, but I really am not. I am, with Vice President Salvatore Rocco up in the EOC, we're getting updates hourly of what's happening up there, phone conferences every day. Now we've got our DVPs are starting to do some district meetings via Zoom. So I'm trying to jump on as many of those. So, Doug, I know that sounds boring. It's all work and no play, Bernie. I mentioned on a conference call the other day that a couple weeks ago I did get to go out and hit the links. And there was almost a hush over the phone, like, how dare you, Bernie, go out there and do that? So I don't even want to think about going back out there for a while until we get through this and get this state open and really just look out for the protection of our members. But, I don't have anything right now that's even up there that would really impress anybody by me telling them on this show.
No, I get it. I mean, you're in it. You're in the thick of it, and that kind of leads me to the next question or conversation about what's being the president of a state organization as big as ours. I mean, we're as you travel like we all have, you quickly find out that Florida is one of the largest state associations in North America, and there are a lot of moving parts. Nearly 200 electeds, and then all just at the state level, and then all of your congressional seats, and then that doesn't include your local races and districts and things like that. So, I mean, what's been for you coming in being the president? That we've not had you're in the 75 years we've been in a state association. You look back, we have not had as many presidents as you would imagine because of the length of the terms they've served. So, I mean, what has it been like coming in as the president of the state? The things that really, get you out of bed every morning, the things that you feel are motivating you and the changes you're making. What's that been like?
So, yeah, let me start back. It's funny you mentioned being the such a big state association. I think when the gravity of of leading the state really hit me when I went to my first state and provincial meeting up in Minneapolis. I think this was back in November, and I know that California wasn't there at the state and provincial, which was odd, but they had something going on where General President Shapeberger and General Secretary Kelly were out in California. So there was something happening out in California where they weren't able to be a part of the meeting. And I sat down next to our Secretary Treasurer, and they gave us a copy of the minutes, and then it shows your voting strengths, just like we do at our conventions. And I looked over, and I saw a number that said Florida had like 24,000 members. And then I saw California had like 26,000 members. And they could have been I don't know where the minutes were from, but again, I didn't think those numbers, we had just gone through some budget stuff, that those numbers reflected what we had. So I said, without Brian, the president out in California, being here, when I stood up to give my report to the rest of the state and provincial presidents, I looked over and I said, you know what, fellas, I do believe the numbers are wrong in Florida. Right now, I think we're right about 26,500. And without Brian here to dispute the numbers, because he's only at 26, and I'm telling you I'm at 26.5, I said, I'm very proud to report that Florida is the largest state organization in this state and provincial organization, right? And everyone kind of looked at me, and I said, let me tell you something. I had absolutely nothing to do with it. But in the couple months that I've been in charge of this as president of the state of Florida, I will take full responsibility for us being number one. So,
absolutely.
It was a good, lighthearted moment. We are one of the biggest, and I know Brian would dispute it if he were on the show. We need to get him on here to really put him under the
there we go
spotlight. But we're in the top two. So with that comes a lot of, and you all have been at the local levels. We've all been there. Our members put a lot of pressure on us, but I do feel some pressure to perform for this organization. And, I don't take anything for granted. Every morning when I wake up, even this morning, I said, hey, man, I want to make sure that I have fun on the Doug and Mike show, but I also want to make sure that I'm representing this organization professionally. I think, Mike, you said it best that, I'm only the seventh president, and we're in 76 years this June now. And so I feel, a lot of pressure to make sure that I'm performing up to the level of those guys who were able to stay in office for a long time. Now, I always felt like when I was moving up through the union ranks, and of course I'm a lieutenant on the Orlando Fire Department right now, which I'm very proud to be, and being in the stations every day, I thought that would really resonate with the members that we represent. And I think it does to an extent, but, I knew it was going to be hard. I have another year on Orlando before I hit the promised land to where I could make the decision whether or not I want to continue my career in the Orlando Fire Department or not. But there is a tremendous amount of stress that comes with the job. It is definitely hard. But every one of our jobs are hard out there, especially in these times. So I wake up in the morning and I said, man, get your attitude right. Attitude is everything, I think. And so the challenges, of course, through my first session, I had been on the executive board for a couple of years. It's not as though I needed to learn the ropes of how legislation's passed, but I can tell you that building relationships was my number one goal coming into this presidency, of making sure that I start meeting the people that are going to be making decisions on behalf of our pay, on behalf of our benefits, and really just changing things at the state level. So I hit the ground running back in July of last year, just strengthening relationships we already had, trying to build new ones, and so I really focused that has been my focus through the whole first year. I will tell you that it was eye-opening to work through my first legislative session. It is a grind for sure. There are so many things, moving parts that happen, and God bless the staff we have and our other principal officers and our DVPs that helped me through that. It was a struggle. We didn't miss a day up there, but just to see the inner workings from that position, it was pretty overwhelming at times. And so just really glad I have a supportive family, supportive kids at home, and a supportive board. I mean, the board's been tremendous. But, we transitioned right out of session, as session was ending, the last week of session, I remember meeting with Senator Hooper, one of our good friends and retirees and emeriti. And, Hooper and I couldn't even get near each other because of what it was coming down with COVID. And there was no one in the Capitol that last week. And we immediately, even with the extension a few days of session, we transitioned into this. So, I mean, it was like, it's been like a flash in the pan on most of this stuff. The session went fast, but it still feels like it's going because we're grinding every day now on COVID. So,
sure.
To say that this wasn't a memorable first year would be an understatement with everything happening. And I don't see it slowing down, even when we, now the new challenges we have to deal with. So it's a new year, looking forward to the new year, but I think the challenges are still in front of us on many levels now because of an ailing economy, and the fear around people being exposed to this virus. So, it's going to be nonstop, man. So it is making me rethink my retirement plan with the fire department. But, again, I'm going to keep fighting every day, do the best job I can and hold my head up high and try to represent this organization the way I feel it needs to be represented. And hopefully with the family that we've surrounded on that board, they will help me through that. If they see me my head start to drop, that they help pick it up. So, I depend a lot on the feedback I'm getting from our DVPs. One thing I did find out real quick is you can't know everybody. You can't know everything. So you're really going to depend on that family in order for us all to be successful. And if we all do that and people are honest, I don't have a problem looking myself in the mirror and knowing I'm giving 100%. And, sometimes that may not be enough for people, but I will be able to hold my head up high regardless through this whole thing, knowing that we are working every day, grinding every day to do what's best for our members here in Florida.
Well, it does show that now the dependence on technology, it's like something we've been working on for years, and it you just had your first digital executive council meeting, so that who would have thought that could have been possible?
Well, I think you and Mike could have thought it. I can tell you that when you all were talking about these things on the board a couple years ago, I may have been distracted by a squirrel. Mm-hmm. But now that we're using it, I'm like, dang them Mike and Doug, man. What's going on here?
Yeah, congrats on that. You may have pulled off one of the first video conference council meetings in the history of associations. Chad would be jealous in Louisiana, I'm sure of that.
I bet. No, we're, like you said, changing times, Doug, and hopefully the restrictions will relax a little bit if we can figure out what's going on in testing and hopefully be able to assemble some people. I am worried about we've moved, like you said, the executive council met, it went off without a hitch. Especially since it was the first one, Mike, of all time. We could always make improvements, but, I'm worried about the way we do business that way. We've been consulting with IFF General Counsel, Doug Steele, and he's really been offering us some insight on how to proceed forward with elections and meetings. But for a first one, I thought it went pretty well. Hopefully we'll get something. We'll find out some a vaccine here soon, so we don't have to depend on that. But if we do, we had our first good first run, and I felt pretty good about it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, listen, I mean, from myself, my district, we are extremely proud of the association, of the work you're doing, the leadership role. You've been a great leader thus far. As you've been at the helm of the ship, and you just never know, right? I mean, you never know what you're dealing with, never know what you're going to be doing. And, we talk about it all the time, resiliency, trying to be prepared, and just, the Marines, motto of adapt and overcome. Right. So, right. You've been a great leader through all this. We've been a great team. You think about those relationships we built through the years, and we stand on the shoulders of giants with that. And we continue to, you look at how, powerful and impactful it was to be able to, transition into the EOC as state, fire marshal, being gracious enough to, with the relationships we have, to allow us in the EOC every single day, and having our Vice President Rocco Salvatore in there at that table where decisions are made, to be able to liaise. And, I know, like in my district, I've got little small fire departments throughout the Panhandle that have benefited directly, from us being at that table. And so just tipping my hat to you. You're doing a great job. I appreciate the work you're doing.
Man, I thank you for that. I wish I could take full credit for that, but like I said, it's the team. Rocco, that's his wheelhouse.
The machine, there. Rocco.
Yeah. And I can't say enough good things without just sounding completely out of control with this. But the CFO, man, the relationship we have with him is second to none, man. And he's been very responsive and receptive to things that we've had to bring to his attention, and things that he's brought to our attention. So that relationship is as good and strong as any political relationship, I think, that I've ever been around. And, and some of that I inherited, some of it I've tried to build on with him. But, man, just a champion right now of our cause. That doesn't mean we're going to get everything we want. It just means he's really, truly given us a fair shake at the table. And that's truly been my motto of, hey, we need a seat at this table. We need a voice at this table. That doesn't mean, we're going to win every battle or every debate. But if we don't have a voice at the table, then we're really wasting our time in politics. So this guy has given us, CFO Petronas has given us a seat at that table, has taken us serious. And I think that's all you can ask for in politics. So, getting.
Well, you mentioned politics.
Yeah.
We still have an election coming up.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So,
I'm not talking about internal elections. I'm talking about statewide, Congress.
Right. No, I'm with you. So, okay, yeah, I'll touch on that a little bit. I will stay in my lane a little bit on the presidential election. I know that the IFF is working through everything they have to work through. Hopefully they're going to hold their convention, but it looks doubtful now. And I haven't talked to DVP Dix yet this week. I seem to be on the phone with him more than I'm on the phone with my wife lately. But I know they're looking at what they're doing from there for their convention. And we already know that the IFF has gone all in with Vice President Biden. So I'll stay in my lane from that standpoint of looking at what's happening state and locally. Before I go state, let me give a shameless plug to a good friend of ours. I heard this week, I spoke to him on Saturday, the ex-president of 1403, Omar Blanco, as you all know, is running for Congress in District 26 down in South Florida. And there were three candidates in there. I heard this past week they're down to two, which is our firefighter, Omar Blanco, in the race. And he's actually up against his mayor, which it's kind of weird. But Omar is challenging to be the first active firefighter to serve in Congress. And I could tell you he is fighting every day. If anybody's going to pull off an upset like that, it's going to be an Omar Blanco. If you've been around him, and I know both of you have, through our fights for cancer legislation, Omar has been there from the beginning. He is a relentless fighter, will knock on doors every day.
Yes.
No one is going to outwork Omar Blanco. And so before the shameless plug is to really go to Omar Blanco, his campaign, his website, and donate $26. That's for District 26 to Omar Blanco. Let's help get one of our own up there in Congress fighting for us every day, whether it be COVID, whether it be pensions, because I believe that fight's coming with this downturn. And, to have that kind of advocacy up in D.C., someone who knows how we live and what we're living through from our viewpoint is it's so important right now. So that's my shameless plug, Doug, on the congressional races. For the most part, if they're from your congressional district, obviously the locals in that area are the ones who do the supporting. If it's a federal race, you can only give personally. You can't give from PACs from our state. So that's why I wanted to plug Omar. It has to come from your personal finances. So go to omarblanco.com and I think if I've given the wrong email address,
but that's it. No, you're on top of it. That's it. The election is August 18th.
Yeah, and let's get him in. Give him $26. That's not hard for our members to give, and let's get this guy up there and representing firefighters from an active standpoint, and then he could be as tired as me.
There you go. Misery loves company, right?
Yeah. So let me get to the state part. So again, we don't have any statewide elections coming up. Like the CFO and your cabinet members are not up for. They're in the midterm right now. But we do have some good races going on around the state. I was talking to Mike earlier about a candidate in his area that Tallahassee firefighters are now supporting. A good friend of ours from back in the day, Allison Tant, and that was some good news this morning. We need some more friends up there, especially on the House side, to keep the rhetoric toned down and to keep our message and like I said, and keep our seat at the table where people are willing to hear what we have to say and take us legitimately and seriously. So I know there's going to be a couple Senate races throughout the state, one down in Miami where we have two friends going against each other. And those are always hard races for our affiliates to really come out and support one over the other. I never look forward to friends running against friends. They are from opposite parties. So it's going to happen. It's just the concern is that if you jump in both feet on one side, then, have you really hurt yourself on the other side? So I feel good about what we were able to do in building some relationships. I'm looking forward to the new leadership in both the Senate and in the House. Not so much, we had a great relationship with Bill Galvano. And I'm looking forward to forging a good relationship there with Wilt Simpson, who will be the incoming president. And then we have Speaker Sprouls coming in, which, we had a little bit. When I got in there, I tried to do what I was telling you to do. I was going to build some relationships. I tried to get into Speaker Oliva's office to try to say, hey, man, we've got new leadership. We've got new vision, we've got a new message, and he was already kind of just stuck in his ways. I'll say it like that he had an agenda and we weren't a part of that. So that was disappointing from my standpoint. I wasn't able to accomplish that goal, but I'm going to do that with Speaker Sprouls. I've met him once or twice. Same thing with the incoming Senate president. Mm-hmm. I know we've got some challenges ahead of us, and they're going to be tough challenges, especially like we were talking about earlier about the downturn. Florida being a very tourism-based state of income. We're going to have some challenges ahead. And so those two are going to be instrumental in helping us all get through this. But so that's where I'm really focusing right now is on my relationship with the leadership. We've got some great relationships in the Senate and very good relationships in the House. So I'm excited about, like I said, the message of continuing to build on those relationships, but I'm also worried. So,
no, absolutely. Now, you know what, though? I wouldn't put any other team in charge of it, and I wouldn't put any other president at the top of it. President Bernoska, Brother Bernie, thank you for taking time to join us today. We're getting clearance from the tower right now to bring this in for a landing.
I love it, man. This was fun, guys. I appreciate you inviting me on. Let's get a good challenge with Chad where we can make sure we win, load it our way, and he'll have to cook us some good Cajun gumbo.
Boom. I love it.
That definitely sounds like a challenge. Well, that's all we have time for today, so thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Doug and Mike Show. Special thanks to our sponsor at Chief_Miller on Instagram. Have a great day.